Do you believe in the vitality of Francophone communities outside of Quebec?
I think that's important, but I'm far from confident that this policy would help that. That's my concern. I mean, I think we're not able to target permanent immigrants to particular spots. With temporary migrants, we have more control. So you might bring someone to Toronto who is Francophone. They may not interact very much with other Francophone or individuals wanting to speak French. And then they have the right to move to Montreal or Quebec City because they're permanent residents. These are my concerns about that.
I understand the thought you are putting forward. Doesn't mean that we agree on that, but would it be the same, the opposite way? So Anglophone immigration in Quebec, would it also harm our economic objectives?
Parce que si c'est vrai pour
I think I understand your question. Sorry.
Pitou, c'est vrai pour Minou. Bonne chance avec ça.
Because the opposite should also be true. If you're claiming one thing, the opposite should be also true.
I wasn't planning to come to talk about the Quebec selection system today, so I'm not suggesting...
Non, peut-être qu'on s'est mal compris. Je parle vraiment, parce que vous avez vraiment...
You said, roughly, that Francophone immigration outside of Quebec is harmful for our economic objectives. So I'm asking you if the opposite is also correct. So Anglophone immigration in Quebec, is it also harmful to our economic objectives?
I would say it would be if the Anglophones going to Quebec under the federal system, I'm guessing, have lower earnings. I'm agnostic on the language issue. Okay, I think what the federal program should be geared to generating earnings of immigrants 10 years out that are above average. And so I really come down to whether if that's not happening, then I would agree, then it's a problem.
Je suggère très humblement et vous.
So I will submit humbly. The language issue is quite sensitive, especially in official language minority communities outside of Quebec, and Francophone immigration outside of Quebec for Francophones outside of Quebec is eminently important. It's even vital for the survival and the growth of their populations. So we shouldn't just have an economic lens on this issue, in my opinion. Of course, there's economic potential in all this. I mean, take this as you will. This is not really a value judgment, but it is important in a country that claims to have two official languages to also put the spotlight on official language minority communities, which brings me, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of time, but I'd like to move on to you, sir. What are the main obstacles that newcomers are experiencing in the first stages of the immigration procedure? Well, the first obstacles, it's about finding a job which corresponds to their skills, which really appreciates what they are, what they know, so not precarious work. Of course, it could take some time before they reach their full potential, especially in Ontario. Housing has become a problem. Not having a credit history is, of course, a big challenge, and people are being asked for up to 6 months of deposit before they can rent a place. And for Francophones in general, for allophones as well, it's learning the language or the languages, learning English in this case. It takes at least 4 years of investment in some situations. So as long as it's not done, it keeps delaying the economic integration of these individuals. Thank you, Mr. Bernal-Lesep. Thank you, Mr. Amoussoux.
For a second round, it's 5 minutes, and we begin with Mr. Fred Davies.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Professor, I'd like to follow up on a couple of things because it's piqued my interest in your thesis on how wages need to rise in order to attract labor. In your view, have you looked at the current Canadian immigration policy? Is the policy as it's being delivered now on a broad basis suppressing wages?
I think that an argument could be made, and I have another paper from 2020 in the Canadian Journal of Economics that looked at the temporary foreign worker program using data circa from like the Harper government period, not on the most recent period. And we came up with a theoretical model and empirical evidence that suggests that the temporary foreign worker program could be suppressing wages and lowering wages. I think the bigger concern probably is, do we see wage growth? Like, are we stopping the wage growth? Or is it lowering wages? I'm not so sure. But I think I would be concerned that wages are not growing, that labor shortages are becoming chronic, or so-called labor shortages are becoming chronic, and we're relying on temporary foreign worker programs and less skilled permanent immigration to solve a problem that in many countries is addressed just through wage growth. And at the same time, I hear people, well-intentioned people complaining about poverty rates and income inequality, and yet the best way to fix these problems is through wage growth. And yet we have anyway, I'll stop there.
No, it's okay, because I want to cover a couple of areas, and I have limited time, but do you see any regional differences in the way wages are growing or not growing? You see a disproportionate...
It's a good question. I mean, off the top of my head, I'm guessing wages are probably growing faster in Alberta, but I just because of the strength of the resource sector there, I'd have to look at the numbers to know for sure. So
you had mentioned the skills gaps, or one of you mentioned skills gap, and I'm hopeful that you've been following what's been happening in the post-secondary sector, where there have been sort of puppy mills of students coming into the country, and the committee has studied this in quite some depth. But one of the issues and one of the problems I've seen is the government changed how graduates can get and maintain a job and a path to permanent residency. That's effectively stopped now. In my riding, I've got Niagara College, which is a very significant educational institution. They've got a world-class culinary arts program, brewing program, distilling program, and that's a 2-, 3-, and 4-year program. It used to be the case that you could get a work permit for the equivalency of the time you were in school. Now, if you graduate, you have to leave. Now, I happen to own a brewery, so I'm looking for brewers all the time, but I can't get them now, especially in this program, because the people that graduate have to leave. But yet, a person who gets not to disrespect the liberal arts, but if you have a degree in sociology, you can still stay for the equivalent time of your education. Do you see that as a problem, and would you make recommendations to change that?
Just really quickly, because I know there's not a lot of time. I have written a few Globe and Mail opinion pieces on these issues, and I'm happy to chat afterwards. I think I'm pretty consistent on this. I actually think international students are great for Canada. We just have to get the design and the balance right. And I think whether someone stays or not, I would use the same criteria I've been talking about for the economic immigration program. At least permanently, I think an international student should stay as an economic immigrant if we think 10 years from now their earnings are going to be above average. So that's going to be true of some college programs. That's going to be true of some university, but not all university programs. And I think that's the fair way to do it, because otherwise you're going to say, oh, you're a university professor, you're favoring the universities. I think we should let the data drive it.